Maxine Waters thought she was untouchable. For 40 years, she ruled her California district like an empress, shielded by power, protected by the establishment, and armed with accusations that destroyed anyone who dared to question her. But when she stood on national television and called the director of national intelligence a traitor and a Russian asset, she forgot one critical detail. Tulsi Gabbard is a combat veteran with access to every secret Waters ever tried to bury. And what happened next will change American politics forever. The 86-year-old congresswoman had built an empire on intimidation, race card politics, riot rhetoric, financial schemes that turned taxpayer dollars into personal wealth. For 4 decades, she survived every scandal, every investigation, every attempt to expose the truth. The media protected her. The democratic machine protected her. Fear protected her. Until the moment she attacked someone who actually took their oath to defend the Constitution seriously. Someone who commanded the most powerful intelligence apparatus on Earth. Someone who had the evidence, the authority, and the courage to expose everything. Tulsi Gabbard's response to Waters' accusations was delivered with the precision of a sniper taking aim. Congresswoman Waters, let's discuss your $4.5 million mansion and how you afforded it on a congressional salary. The words cut through the studio like a blade, and in that moment, everyone watching knew they were about to witness something unprecedented. The systematic destruction of one of the most corrupt politicians in American history. Smash that like button, because what you're about to hear will expose 40 years of financial fraud, incitement to violence, foreign betrayal, and crimes against the most vulnerable. This decorated Iraq War veteran is about to reveal classified intelligence that will shock you to your core. Maxine Waters had terrorized the political landscape for decades. Her position on the House Financial Services Committee gave her power over billions of dollars. Her willingness to incite violence gave her street credibility. Her mastery of identity politics made her untouchable to critics. She thought her shields were impenetrable. She thought wrong. Because when you call someone who controls America's intelligence community a puppet and a traitor on live television, you better be ready for the truth. All of it, every hidden bank account, every incited riot, every foreign connection, every leaked secret, every dead American whose blood stains your hands. This isn't just about corruption. This is about a member of Congress who sold out her country, who protected criminals preying on children, who took money from America's enemies, and who got American soldiers killed. Today, the lies end. Today, justice arrives. Today, Maxine Waters faces the consequences of 40 years of betrayal. It was supposed to be a standard Tuesday morning segment on MSNBC's Morning Joe. National security, intelligence oversight, a policy discussion between two prominent women in American politics. The producers expected a respectful exchange of views, maybe some partisan disagreement, nothing more. They had no idea they were about to broadcast the most devastating political confrontation in television history. Maxine Waters had specifically requested this joint appearance with Tulsi Gabbard. For weeks, she'd been watching the new director of national intelligence with growing concern. Not because of policy differences, not because of partisan politics, but because Gabbard represented something Waters had spent her entire career ensuring never existed in Washington. Authentic accountability backed by real power. Someone who couldn't be threatened, couldn't be bought, and couldn't be destroyed by the usual tactics. Waters had survived everything. Ethics investigations that would have ended other careers. Financial scandals that should have led to prosecution. Riot-inciting rhetoric that got people killed. Every time she emerged unscathed. Protected by the Democratic establishment, protected by sympathetic media, protected by her mastery of playing the race card to deflect any criticism. For 40 years, these shields had been invincible. They destroyed countless opponents who dared to challenge her corruption. But Tulsi Gabbard was different. A combat veteran who'd actually served in Iraq, who'd worn the uniform and taken fire, who'd watched friends die defending the country, who took her oath to defend the Constitution as a sacred vow, not a political slogan. And now she commanded the NSA, the CIA, the entire apparatus of American intelligence. She had access to every secret, every communication, every hidden transaction. If there were skeletons in Waters's closet, Gabbard could find them. And based on the intelligence briefings she'd been receiving, there weren't just skeletons. There was a graveyard. From Waters's perspective, the setup seemed perfect. A live discussion about intelligence community oversight where she could paint Gabbard as compromised, as dangerous, as a threat to democracy. The same playbook that had worked for decades: question their patriotism, suggest foreign ties, wrap it in moral outrage, let the media amplify the accusations, destroy them before they could fight back. It had worked on so many others. Why wouldn't it work now? Host Joe Scarborough opened the segment with standard questions about intelligence priorities and the relationship between the intelligence community and Congress. For the first 10 minutes, everything proceeded normally. Waters spoke about the importance of diversity in intelligence work and the need for community oversight. Gabbard discussed modernizing intelligence capabilities while protecting American civil liberties and privacy. The conversation was professional, substantive, unremarkable. Then Waters made her move. "Joe, I think we need to address the elephant in the room." She turned to face the camera with the practiced indignation that had served her for 4 decades. Her voice carried the weight of moral authority, the righteous anger of someone exposing a grave injustice. We have a director of national intelligence who many believe is compromised by foreign powers, who has shown sympathy for our enemies, who cannot be trusted with America's secrets. The temperature in the studio dropped. You could feel it. Scarborough and co-host Mika Brzezinski exchanged worried glances. This wasn't in the script. This wasn't the agreed-upon discussion. But Waters was just getting started. She'd prepared for this moment, and she was going to use every weapon in her arsenal. Tulsi Gabbard is Vladimir Putin's favorite American politician. She's a Russian puppet who parrots Kremlin talking points. She's a traitor to this country. And frankly, she's also a white supremacist sympathizer who has absolutely no business accessing our nation's most sensitive secrets. The accusations hung in the air like toxic smoke. Russian puppet, traitor, white supremacist sympathizer. Waters had just deployed her entire arsenal of character assassination in a single paragraph. The same tactics that had destroyed so many careers. The same playbook that had protected her corruption for decades. For exactly 7 seconds, Tulsi Gabbard sat perfectly still. The silence was deafening. Every person watching could feel the tension building. The calm before the storm. The moment before lightning strikes. When Tulsi finally spoke, her voice carried the controlled fury of someone who'd faced real enemies in real combat. Someone who knew the difference between political theater and actual betrayal. Someone who was about to end Maxine Waters's career with surgical precision. Congresswoman Waters. Each word was precise as a sniper's bullet. Since you want to discuss foreign compromise and treason on national television, let's have that discussion. She reached into her briefcase with deliberate precision, withdrawing a thick folder marked with official DNI classification stamps. The red borders, the top secret markings, the authority of the United States intelligence community. Let's discuss your $4.5 million mansion and how you afforded it on a congressional salary. Waters's face twitched, just for a moment, but everyone saw it. The predator had suddenly become prey. Let's discuss One United Bank and the $12 million in taxpayer money you steered to your husband's business interests during the financial crisis while American families lost everything. Tulsi opened the folder like a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. Documents visible to the cameras, official seals, financial records, the weight of proof. Let's discuss the riots you've incited over 3 decades that left dozens of Americans dead and billions in property destroyed. Another folder appeared on the table. Let's discuss the foreign money flowing through your district from Chinese state enterprises, Haitian oligarchs, and African dictators. A third folder. And let's discuss why multiple intelligence agencies have files on your activities dating back decades. Files documenting financial crimes, foreign influence operations, and the compromise of classified information that got American soldiers killed. The transformation was complete. Maxine Waters, who'd entered the studio as the attacker, now sat frozen, her eyes wide, her hands gripping the table. She just realized she wasn't facing another politician playing by Washington's rules. She was facing a warrior with access to every secret she'd ever tried to hide. Someone who'd done the homework. Someone who had the receipts. Someone who was about to destroy her on national television with declassified intelligence that couldn't be denied, couldn't be dismissed, and couldn't be survived. This is outrageous. Waters finally found her voice, though it was weak and defensive. You can't just make wild accusations without evidence. This is a witch hunt. You're targeting me because I'm a strong black woman who speaks truth to power. I'm not making accusations, Tulsi interrupted with military precision. I'm presenting evidence. As Director of National Intelligence, I have the authority to declassify any information I determine to be in the public interest. And exposing a member of Congress who has betrayed her oath, stolen taxpayer money, incited violence that killed Americans, taken money from foreign governments, and compromised national security. That's definitely in the public interest. She held up the first folder for the cameras to see. The label was clearly visible. Waters' Financial Crimes, Classified Evidence, authorized for declassification by order of the Director of National Intelligence. Now, Congresswoman, Tulsi said with deadly calm, shall we start with how you really built your fortune? Or would you prefer to retract your baseless accusations against me and apologize while you still have the chance? Waters' mouth opened and closed. No words came out. She'd walked into an ambush. She'd brought accusations to a fight where the other side brought evidence. She tried to destroy someone who had the power to destroy her completely. And now, on live television with millions watching, her 40-year reign of corruption was about to end. Let's start with One United Bank, Tulsi said, opening the first folder with deliberate slowness. The American people deserve to know how their tax dollars ended up in your family's pockets. How you turned the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression into a personal enrichment scheme. How you violated your oath of office to save your own financial interests while millions of Americans lost their homes, their savings, their dreams. The MSNBC studio had transformed from a news set into a courtroom, and Maxine Waters was about to be tried, convicted, and sentenced by the evidence of her own corruption. Tulsi opened the first folder with the methodical precision of someone who'd planned every detail of this moment, every document in order, every piece of evidence ready to present, every accusation backed by proof that couldn't be denied. Congresswoman Waters. Tulsi's voice carried the authority of someone who'd studied every transaction, every phone call, every dirty deal. Let's discuss how you turned the 2008 financial crisis into a personal ATM machine. She produced the first document, holding it up so the cameras could capture every detail. Official Treasury Department seal. Classification markings. The weight of government authority. September 2008. The entire American financial system is collapsing. Lehman Brothers fails. AIG needs a government bailout. The stock market is in free fall. Millions of Americans are losing their homes to foreclosure. Families are being destroyed. The American dream is dying. And what was Maxine Waters doing? She was arranging a special meeting between Treasury officials and One United Bank, a bank where her husband, Sidney Williams, was on the board of directors and owned substantial stock. Waters tried to interrupt. That meeting was for the National Bankers Association. I was advocating for minority-owned banks that were being ignored by the government. This wasn't about personal interest. This was about making sure black-owned institutions weren't destroyed by the crisis. Stop lying. Tulsi cut her off with the authority of someone who had the receipts. I have the recordings. The word recordings hit Waters like a physical blow. Her eyes widened. Her face went pale. The confidence drained from her expression. Because recordings meant proof. Recordings meant there was no way to spin this, no way to claim she was being taken out of context, no way to play the victim. Tulsi produced audio equipment and placed it on the table. NSA intercepts of your phone calls arranging this meeting. Communications surveillance authorized under FISA for national security purposes. Do you want to hear them? Or do you want to continue lying to the American people? Without waiting for a response, she pressed play. Waters' own voice filled the studio, crystal clear, undeniable, damning. Kevin, it's Maxine. I need that meeting with Treasury ASAP. Sydney's bank is about to go under and we'll lose everything. Make sure it's just one United Executives. I don't want any other banks muddying the waters or diluting the ask. A male voice responded. Congresswoman, that could look like a conflict of interest given your husband's position. The optics alone could be devastating if this gets out. Waters's voice turned sharp, cold, ruthless. I don't care how it looks. My family has $300,000 in that bank. If it fails, we're ruined. Our retirement is gone. Everything we've built is destroyed. Make the meeting happen. Use whatever justification you need. National importance of minority banking. Economic justice. I don't care, just make it happen. The recording continued. More calls. More pressure. Waters leveraging her position on the House Financial Services Committee to demand access to Treasury officials. Threatening to hold up legislation if the meeting didn't happen. Using her political power to save her family's money while millions of American families were losing everything. The recording was absolutely devastating. Waters hadn't just arranged a meeting. She'd specifically orchestrated it to save her own financial interests. She'd used her position as a member of Congress, her authority over financial legislation, her access to Treasury officials, all to protect her family's investment while the country burned. And she'd done it all while publicly positioning herself as a champion of the people, a defender of those hurt by the crisis, a voice for the voiceless. But Tulsi was just getting started. She produced more documents, financial records, Treasury Department analysis, Federal Reserve reports, each one building the case methodically, relentlessly, undeniably. These financial records show that One United Bank received $12 million in TARP bailout funds after your intervention. Taxpayer money that was supposed to stabilize the financial system and prevent economic collapse ended up saving your husband's investment and your family's wealth. She displayed a Treasury Department analysis on the monitors. The data was clear. One United was one of the worst performing banks in America. It had been cited by federal regulators for unsafe and unsound banking practices. It had failed multiple stress tests. It had no business receiving federal funds under any objective criteria. But it got $12 million in taxpayer money because Maxine Waters made it happen. The evidence kept mounting, document after document, transaction after transaction. The pattern was undeniable. Here are SEC documents showing that your husband's shares in One United would have been completely worthless without that bailout. The bank was insolvent. It was going to fail. But because you intervened, because you used your political power, because you put your family's interests ahead of your oath of office, those shares retained their value. And later, your husband sold them for a substantial profit, while One United continued to struggle and eventually needed additional federal assistance. Waters tried again to defend herself. These were legal campaign contributions. This was advocacy for minority-owned institutions that were being discriminated against by the financial establishment. I was doing my job representing my constituents and ensuring that black-owned banks weren't left behind. This wasn't advocacy, Tulsi responded coldly. This was corruption, and it wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern spanning 2 decades. She produced more financial records, spreadsheets, banking data, campaign contribution reports. Between 2003 and 2023, your campaign and associated PACs received over $2.8 million from executives and board members of minority-owned banks that received federal assistance after your intervention. Assistance they wouldn't have received based on their financial condition. Assistance they only got because you made it happen. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on Waters. That's the definition of pay to play corruption, Congresswoman. Banks pay you through campaign contributions. You use your position to get them federal money. They profit. You profit through political support and future contributions. And the taxpayers foot the bill for the whole corrupt scheme. This is exactly the kind of corruption that destroys people's faith in government. But the most damning revelation was about to drop. Now let's discuss your real estate empire, Tulsi said, producing property records, multiple documents, deeds, tax assessments, purchase agreements. You own a $4.5 million mansion in Hancock Park. That's outside your district, by the way. You also own multiple other properties. Total real estate holdings worth over $6 million. Your husband has his own portfolio of properties worth millions more. She let that information sink in before continuing. Congresswoman Waters, you've been in Congress since 1991. That's over 30 years. Your congressional salary is $174,000 per year. Your husband is a former professional football player who played in the 1960s and 70s and later worked as a car salesman and Mercedes-Benz dealer. Where did the money come from? How did two people with your income profiles accumulate over $10 million in assets? Waters was visibly sweating now, perspiration on her forehead, her hands trembling slightly. My husband had successful business investments. We saved money. We made smart financial decisions over many years. There's nothing improper about building wealth through hard work and good choices. Really? Tulsi interrupted, producing IRS documents. I have tax returns. Your husband's declared income never exceeded $200,000 per year during the period when you accumulated most of this wealth. His car dealership was modestly profitable at best. So where did the money come from? The financial forensics were devastating. Treasury Department financial crimes analysis shows systematic patterns of money flowing from banks you helped, through various LLCs and trust structures, eventually ending up financing your real estate purchases. The web of shell companies, the suspicious timing of transactions, the correlation between your interventions and subsequent payments. It all pointed to one conclusion. You were being paid for your political influence through a sophisticated money laundering network. This is a witch hunt. Waters finally exploded. You're targeting me because I'm a strong black woman who refuses to be silenced. This is about racism and sexism. This is about powerful white interests trying to destroy a voice for the black community. I'm targeting you because you're a corrupt politician who stole taxpayer money, Tulsi replied with ice-cold precision. Your race and gender are completely irrelevant. Your crimes are not. Dr. King would be ashamed of you using the civil rights movement as a shield for corruption. You dishonor every person who actually fought for justice by hiding behind the very discrimination they fought against. She produced one final document from the Financial Crimes folder. This is a Treasury Department Criminal Investigation Division report from 2010 recommending prosecution for bank fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and violation of federal conflict of interest laws. It details everything: the one united scheme, the pattern of pay-to-play, the money laundering through shell companies, the entire corrupt network. This report was buried because of your political connections, because the Obama administration didn't want the controversy, because powerful people protected you. But I'm declassifying it today. The evidence was overwhelming. Phone recordings proving she'd used her position for personal gain, financial records showing suspicious money flows, property documents revealing wealth that couldn't be explained by legitimate income, tax returns that didn't match her asset accumulation, criminal investigation reports that should have led to prosecution, all of it presented with the authority of declassified intelligence. Congresswoman Waters, Tulsi said, closing the first folder. You turned the financial crisis, the worst economic disaster since the Great Depression, into a personal enrichment scheme. While millions of Americans lost their homes, their savings, their futures, you made sure your family got rich. While banks failed and families were destroyed and people lost everything they'd worked for their entire lives, you profited. You violated your oath of office. You betrayed the public trust. You committed federal crimes. And you did it all while claiming to be a champion of the people you were robbing. And she reached for the second folder, this one marked with FBI and DHS seals. The evidence of financial corruption had shaken Waters. What came next would destroy her completely. Now let's discuss how many Americans died because of the violence you've incited over the past 3 decades. Tulsi opened the second folder, revealing FBI reports, DHS threat assessments, and crime scene photographs that painted a horrific picture of violence and death, directly linked to Waters' inflammatory rhetoric. Congresswoman Waters, Tulsi began, her voice heavy with the weight of lost American lives. You've spent 30 years inciting violence for political gain. You've used inflammatory rhetoric to build your political brand. You've encouraged riots, praised destruction, and given moral cover to criminals. Today, we're going to count the bodies. We're going to put names and faces to the Americans who died because you told angry mobs their violence was understandable. She produced a photograph from April 1992. Los Angeles burning, smoke rising from hundreds of fires, bodies in the streets, buildings reduced to rubble, the Rodney King riots, 53 Americans dead, over 2,000 injured, $1 billion in property damage, entire neighborhoods destroyed, lives ruined, families torn apart. And what did Maxine Waters do? You poured gasoline on the fire. You legitimized the violence. You encouraged the destruction. Tulsi pressed play on another audio recording, this one from a press conference during the riots. Waters' voice filled the studio and every word was damning. I call it a rebellion, not a riot. When people are angry and frustrated because of systemic injustice, they have to express that anger somehow. I'm not asking people to go inside and be peaceful. The violence is understandable, if not fully acceptable. There are those who would like for me to tell people to calm down, to go home, to accept the verdict. I'm not going to do that. The recording continued with Waters actively discouraging peace and order. Her words gave permission for violence. Her rhetoric provided moral justification for destruction. Her political position lent authority to criminal behavior, and people died because of it. You legitimized violence, Tulsi said, producing FBI crime statistics and victim reports. You told rioters their actions were understandable. You gave them permission to destroy Los Angeles. You told them they had a right to their rage, and that rage manifested in murder, arson, assault, and destruction. 53 Americans dead, Congresswoman. Here are their faces. She displayed photographs of the victims. Real people, real families, real lives destroyed. Dwight Taylor, age 42, father of 3, shot while trying to protect his liquor store from looters. Eduardo Villa, age 33, beaten to death by a mob while sitting in his truck at an intersection. Imran Sheikh, age 23, burned alive in his family's swap meat business when rioters set it on fire while he was inside trying to save the merchandise his family had spent years building. Each photograph was a dagger to Waters' political mythology. These weren't statistics. These were human beings with families, with dreams, with futures that ended because Maxine Waters told violent criminals their rage was justified. But you learned nothing from their deaths, Tulsi continued. Fast forward to 2018. You told your supporters to confront Trump administration officials, to create crowds, to push back on them, to make them unwelcome everywhere they go. Another recording played, this time from a 2018 rally in Los Angeles. Waters' voice was even more inflammatory, more aggressive, more likely to inspire violence. If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd and you push back on them. Tell them they're not welcome anymore anywhere. We will make their lives impossible. Within 48 hours of that speech, Tulsi said, producing police reports and incident records, there were 17 documented attacks on government officials and their families. White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders was surrounded by a mob and driven from a restaurant with her family. Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was harassed while trying to eat dinner. Multiple Trump administration staffers were followed home, had their property vandalized, received death threats. All within 2 days of your speech calling for confrontation. But the worst was yet to come. April 17, 2021. Brooklyn Center, Minnesota. Tulsi announced, her voice taking on the edge of a prosecutor presenting evidence in a murder case. You traveled across state lines during the Derek Chauvin trial, while Minneapolis was a powder keg of tension, and you deliberately incited more violence. She played the most damning recording yet. Waters' voice captured by news cameras during her visit to Brooklyn Center. We've got to stay on the street. We've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure that they know we mean business. If the verdict isn't guilty, if they don't convict for murder, we've got to burn it all down. You said this while Minneapolis was already on edge, Tulsi pointed out. While businesses owned by minorities, by immigrants, by working families were being destroyed. While innocent people were hiding in their homes in terror. while National Guard troops were trying to maintain order and prevent more bloodshed. You flew into a crisis zone and told people to get more confrontational. And they did. She produced a DHS intelligence assessment and police incident reports. Within hours of your speech, Minnesota National Guard units were attacked in a drive-by shooting. 2 soldiers injured by gunfire. These are American service members, Congresswoman, soldiers serving their country, trying to protect their fellow Americans, shot at because you told rioters to escalate their violence, because you gave them political cover for attacking the people trying to prevent more destruction. The evidence mounted relentlessly. Police reports, hospital records, autopsy reports, property damage assessments, insurance claims. Since your Brooklyn Center speech in 2021, there have been over 300 violent incidents directly linked to your rhetoric or the movements you've supported. 37 Americans dead, over 500 injured, $2 billion in damage to communities that could barely afford it. Waters tried desperately to defend herself. I was calling for peaceful protest. I was standing in the tradition of the civil rights movement. I was exercising my First Amendment rights to speak out against injustice. The civil rights movement was explicitly about nonviolence. Tulsi interrupted with moral authority. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. rejected violence categorically. He taught that violence defeats its own purpose, that it creates more problems than it solves, that it's both impractical and immoral. You've spent 30 years doing the exact opposite. You've encouraged violence. You've praised riots. You've given political legitimacy to destruction and murder. She produced intelligence assessments showing coordination between Waters' appearances and violent extremist groups. FBI behavioral analysis shows that violent extremist groups specifically plan their activities around your speeches. They know you'll provide political cover for their violence. They know you'll call riots rebellions. They know you'll defend destruction as understandable. They use you, Congresswoman, and you let them because their violence serves your political interests. But the most devastating evidence was personal testimony, victim impact statements, families destroyed by the violence Waters had encouraged. This is a statement from Maria Rodriguez, Tulsi said, reading from a document that carried the weight of unbearable grief. Her husband, Jose, owned a small grocery store in Watts. He'd built it over 20 years, serving his community, employing local people, providing for his family. During the 1992 riots, he tried to protect it from looters. He was beaten to death by a mob in front of his own store while Maxine Waters was on television calling the riots a rebellion and saying the violence was understandable. She continued reading, her voice thick with emotion. My children grew up without a father because Maxine Waters told violent criminals their actions were justified. My husband died defending the business he built to provide for his family. And the woman who encouraged his killers has gotten rich and powerful while we struggled for 30 years without him. She has blood on her hands. American blood. The blood of a good man who only wanted to build something for his family. More victim statements followed. Business owners who lost everything they'd built over lifetimes of work. Families whose loved ones were killed in violence that Waters had encouraged. Communities that never recovered from the destruction she'd praised as rebellion. Each story was a testimony to the real-world consequences of her rhetoric. But here's what makes it even worse, Tulsi said, producing financial records that showed the depth of Waters' depravity. While these communities burned, while your constituents lost their businesses and homes and livelihoods, you were positioning yourself to profit from the destruction. Property values crashed in riot-affected zones, creating opportunities for connected investors to buy land for pennies on the dollar. And financial records show that you and your associates did exactly that. The pattern was sickening and clear. Waters would incite violence through inflammatory rhetoric. Communities would burn. Property values would collapse. Then Waters' financial network, the same corrupt web of shell companies and trusts that had enriched her before, would move in to buy distressed properties at fire sale prices. Years later, when the neighborhoods partially recovered, those properties would be sold at massive profits or developed with federal grants that Waters helped secure. You're not a civil rights leader, Tulsi declared with devastating finality. You're a poverty pimp who profits from the destruction of the very communities you claim to represent. You incite violence, people die, neighborhoods burn, and you get richer. You're a predator feeding on the suffering of your own constituents. She pulled out a final document from the violence folder. This is a joint task force recommendation from the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. It concludes that Maxine Waters represents a clear and present danger to public safety through her continued pattern of inciting violence. The task force recommends monitoring her communications and limiting her access to sensitive information about law enforcement operations. Waters was visibly trembling now, shaking. Her decades of using racial politics as armor and weapon had been pierced by the undeniable evidence of American blood on her hands. Dead Americans, destroyed families, burned businesses, ruined communities, all of it traceable to her rhetoric, her encouragement, her political exploitation of violence. Every riot you've incited, every business destroyed, every family torn apart by violence you encouraged, it all served your political power and financial gain, Tulsi said, closing the second folder with finality. You built your career on the bodies of dead Americans. You got rich while the communities you claimed to serve burned, and you did it all while wrapping yourself in the language of civil rights and justice. She reached for the third folder, marked with CIA and NSA classification stamps. Now let's discuss your connections to foreign intelligence services and how American classified information ended up in the hands of our enemies. How you betrayed not just your constituents, but your country. The third folder Tulsi opened contained intelligence that transformed the narrative from domestic corruption and violence to something approaching treason. The classification markings were from multiple agencies: CIA, NSA, FBI Counterintelligence Division, Defense Intelligence Agency, all pointing to a pattern of foreign influence and potential espionage that spanned continents and decades. Congresswoman Waters, Tulsi began, her voice carrying the weight of national security implications that went far beyond political corruption. For 30 years, you've been selling out American interests to the highest foreign bidder. You've taken money from foreign governments, foreign intelligence services, and foreign criminal organizations. You've provided them with political protection, access to American markets, and potentially even classified information. Today, we expose your international corruption network and its implications for American national security. She produced the first document, a CIA intelligence assessment marked top secret and authorized for declassification. Let's start with Haiti. Between 2010 and 2023, you made 17 trips to Haiti. Officially, these were humanitarian missions to assess earthquake recovery and support democratic development. Unofficially, based on CIA surveillance, you were meeting with some of the most corrupt oligarchs in the Western Hemisphere. Surveillance photographs appeared on the monitors, high-resolution images that left no doubt. Waters meeting with known Haitian crime bosses in luxury hotels. Waters embracing politicians later indicted for embezzling earthquake relief funds. Waters touring properties owned by individuals connected to drug trafficking organizations. Waters accepting envelopes and packages from people identified by the DEA as money launderers. Each photograph was time-stamped and geolocated, undeniable proof. After the 2010 earthquake, billions in international aid flowed into Haiti, Tulsi explained. Money from the United States, from international organizations, from private donors around the world. Most of it disappeared into a network of corruption that prevented Haiti from recovering. Our intelligence shows you helped facilitate that theft. You provided political cover for corrupt Haitian officials. You vouched for organizations that were actually fronts for embezzlement. You used your position on the House Foreign Affairs Committee to protect aid flows to corrupt recipients. She produced financial records from the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. Haitian oligarchs who stole earthquake relief funds needed a way to move that money into the United States banking system without triggering money laundering investigations. You provided that channel through a network of nonprofit organizations in your district that accepted donations from these criminals and then used the money for purposes that had nothing to do with Haiti relief. The money trail was damning and meticulously documented. The Maxine Waters Haiti Foundation received $3.2 million in donations from Haitian businessmen between 2010 and 2015. These same businessmen were later charged by Haitian prosecutors with stealing earthquake relief funds, with corruption, with money laundering. The timing of their donations to Waters' foundation coincided perfectly with periods when she was intervening to protect aid flows to organizations they controlled. That money was for humanitarian work, Waters protested weekly, for helping earthquake victims, for supporting recovery efforts. Then explain this, Tulsi responded coldly, producing IRS documents and foundation tax returns. IRS records show your Haiti foundation spent less than $200,000 on actual Haiti relief over 5 years. Less than 10% of what you raised. The rest went to administrative costs, including substantial payments to your family members as consultants, and to purchase real estate in Los Angeles. You used Haitian earthquake victims as a cover to launder money and enrich your family. But Haiti was just the beginning. The pattern of foreign corruption went much deeper. Now let's discuss China, Tulsi continued, producing NSA intercepts and CIA assessments. Your congressional district includes the port of Los Angeles and the port of Long Beach, two of the largest ports in America, ports that handle billions of dollars in Chinese imports every year. For 20 years, you've been protecting Chinese intelligence operations and Chinese business interests in exchange for campaign contributions and financial opportunities for your associates. She displayed a pattern of financial transfers that the NSA had tracked over 2 decades. Between 2005 and 2023, businesses in your district with direct ties to the Chinese Communist Party and Chinese state-owned enterprises contributed over $4.8 million to your campaigns and affiliated political action committees. $4.8 million from China to support your political career. Those are legitimate American businesses making legal campaign contributions, Waters insisted desperately. You can't prove they're controlled by China. With Chinese state ownership that we've documented through intelligence collection, Tulsi countered, producing corporate structure documents obtained by the CIA. Long Beach Import Corporation, majority owned by China Ocean Shipping Company, a Chinese state enterprise. San Pedro Trading Company, subsidiary of a firm connected to the People's Liberation Army. California Pacific Logistics, identified by FBI counterintelligence as a front company for Chinese intelligence operations. These aren't American businesses. These are Chinese government operations hiding behind American corporate structures, and you've been protecting them. The intelligence assessment was devastating and detailed. Every time legislation came up that would restrict Chinese access to American ports, you fought against it. Every time security concerns were raised about Chinese operations in California, you dismissed them as xenophobia and racism. Every time law enforcement wanted to investigate Chinese companies in your district, you accused them of racial profiling. You've been running interference for Chinese intelligence for 2 decades. The most damning evidence involved actual intelligence operations against the United States. This is an FBI counterintelligence report from 2019, Tulsi announced. It details how Chinese intelligence services recruited several staff members in your congressional office. When the FBI tried to investigate these potential security breaches, you accused them of racial profiling and blocked their access to your office. You protected Chinese spies who had infiltrated your own staff. She produced transcripts of intercepted communications between Waters' chief of staff and a known Chinese intelligence officer operating under diplomatic cover. These are emails and text messages discussing upcoming legislation affecting Chinese technology companies, Chinese trade policy, Chinese access to American ports. They're discussing information that should have been confidential. Information that only someone inside your office would know. And they're coordinating your opposition to policies that would harm Chinese interests. The emails were explicit about the quid pro quo arrangement. Waters' office would provide advance notice of congressional actions that might affect Chinese companies, would coordinate opposition to legislation harmful to Chinese interests, would protect Chinese operations from law enforcement scrutiny. In exchange, Chinese-connected businesses would continue their financial support through campaign contributions, speaking fees, and business opportunities for Waters' associates. But China isn't your only foreign patron, Tulsi continued, producing more intelligence assessments. Let's talk about your relationships with African dictators. Photographs appeared showing Waters with various African leaders, all of whom were later indicted for war crimes, human rights violations, or massive corruption. Charles Taylor of Liberia, convicted war criminal responsible for thousands of deaths in Sierra Leone. You called him a freedom fighter and opposed his extradition to face justice. Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, responsible for thousands of deaths, for economic collapse, for turning the breadbasket of Africa into a starving nation. You praised his land reform policies while his security forces were murdering opposition leaders. Teodoro Obiang of Equatorial Guinea, one of the most corrupt leaders in the world, who stole billions while his people lived in poverty. You defended him and opposed sanctions. Financial records showed the connections clearly. Each of these dictators had business interests in the United States, specifically in Waters' district. They needed political protection from someone who could shield them from sanctions, from investigations, from congressional oversight. Waters provided that protection, and in return, money flowed into her political network. Wire transfer records showing $2.3 million flowing from African government accounts, from state-owned enterprises, from companies controlled by these dictators, eventually making its way to businesses and political organizations controlled by Waters' associates. The money was laundered through multiple layers, but the pattern was clear. Dictators paid Waters. Waters protected their American interests. American law enforcement was kept at bay. I was supporting African sovereignty and Pan-African solidarity, Waters claimed desperately, falling back on the rhetoric that had protected her before. I was standing against Western imperialism and supporting African leaders fighting for their people's independence. You were supporting African dictators who paid you, Tulsi responded with cutting clarity. You weren't fighting imperialism. You were enabling corruption and murder in exchange for money. You gave political cover to war criminals. You defended tyrants who stole from their people. You opposed justice for victims of genocide. And you did it all for money. The pattern was consistent across continents. Haiti, China, Africa. Waters took money from foreign sources and provided political protection for their operations in America. She used her position in Congress to shield foreign criminals, foreign intelligence services, and foreign dictators from accountability. She sold out American interests for foreign money, and all of it was documented in intelligence files that she never knew existed. Now for the most serious charge, Tulsi said, her voice dropping to a level of gravity that made everyone in the studio sit up straighter. She produced a document marked with the highest classification levels, multiple agency seals, special access program markings, intelligence so sensitive that very few people in government had clearance to see it. This is a joint CIA-NSA assessment concluding that sensitive intelligence from your committee briefings repeatedly ended up in foreign hands. Classified information that only a few members of Congress had access to appeared in Chinese intelligence databases, in Russian intelligence communications, in Iranian intelligence reporting. Information that could only have come from someone in those classified briefings. Someone like you. The implications were staggering. You sit on committees dealing with national security, with financial intelligence, with law enforcement operations against international criminal organizations. Information from those classified briefings, information about American intelligence operations, about military plans, about law enforcement activities, has appeared in the hands of America's enemies. And the pattern of compromise correlates directly with your access to that information. You're accusing me of espionage, Waters sputtered, of being a spy. This is insane. I'm presenting evidence that classified information you had access to was compromised, Tulsi replied. Whether through incompetence, through staff who were working for foreign intelligence services, or through your own deliberate actions, American secrets ended up helping our enemies, and American lives were lost as a result. She produced specific examples, each one more damning than the last. June 2020. You received a classified briefing on upcoming United States sanctions against Chinese banks involved in money laundering and sanctions evasion. Within 72 hours, those banks had moved billions in assets to avoid the sanctions. Someone warned them. Someone who knew the sanctions were coming. March 2021. Classified briefing on DEA operations against Mexican cartels, including timing and targets. Within 1 week, 3 major operations had to be canceled because the cartel targets had disappeared or moved their operations. Someone tipped them off. Someone who knew the operational details. September 2022. Intelligence briefing on Iranian nuclear smuggling networks that were moving restricted materials. The networks immediately changed their patterns and methods. Someone leaked the information about how we were tracking them. Someone who had access to that intelligence. Each leak could be traced back to information Waters had access to through her committee assignments. The pattern was undeniable. The correlation was too strong to be coincidence. And intelligence agencies had been quietly documenting it for years, building a case that was now being revealed to the public. Congresswoman Waters, Tulsi concluded, closing the foreign influence folder. You've spent 30 years selling out American interests to foreign criminals, foreign dictators, and foreign intelligence services. You've taken their money. You've protected their operations. You've compromised national security for personal gain. You're not just corrupt, you're a traitor. She reached for the 4th folder, marked with DEA, FBI, and Border Patrol insignias. Now let's discuss how many American children have suffered because of your protection of gang and cartel operations in your district. How you've turned your congressional district into a safe haven for drug trafficking, human smuggling, and the exploitation of children. The 4th folder contained some of the darkest intelligence in the entire briefing. As Tulsi opened it, revealing DEA surveillance reports, FBI gang analysis, Border Patrol intelligence assessments, and missing children cases, the full horror of Waters' protection of criminal organizations became clear. This wasn't about political corruption anymore. This was about crimes against children, against the most vulnerable, against those who depended on their representatives to protect them, not to enable their exploitation. Congresswoman Waters, Tulsi began, her voice heavy with barely controlled rage. Your district has been a sanctuary not for immigrants seeking better lives, but for gang members, drug dealers, human traffickers, and child predators. And you've protected them for 40 years. You've run interference for them. You've blocked law enforcement. You've provided political cover. And children have suffered because of it. She produced a map of South Central Los Angeles overlaid with crime statistics, gang territory markers, and locations of violent incidents. Your district has the highest concentration of gang activity in California. MS 13, 18th Street, Bloods, Crips. They all operate freely because you've made your district a no-go zone for federal law enforcement. You've told your constituents that federal agents are the enemy, that law enforcement is the problem, that they should resist cooperation with authorities trying to protect them. I protect my community from police brutality and federal overreach, Waters protested. I stand against the criminalization of black and brown youth. I fight against discriminatory enforcement that targets communities of color. You protect criminals from justice, Tulsi countered, producing DEA intelligence reports and operational records. In 2017, DEA had a major operation plan to take down a fentanyl distribution network operating out of your district. This network was responsible for hundreds of overdose deaths across California. They were importing pure fentanyl from Mexico and distributing it through your district. The DEA had wiretaps, surveillance, informants. They were ready to take down the entire organization. You got wind of the operation and held a press conference denouncing federal stormtroopers invading our community to persecute our young men. She played news footage of Waters' press conference, where she'd rallied residents to resist what she called federal occupation, to protect our youth from persecution, to stand against racist enforcement. Within 24 hours of your press conference, the entire distribution network disappeared, Tulsi continued. The DEA operation failed completely. Millions of dollars in investigative work wasted, and the fentanyl kept flowing, kept killing, kept destroying families. She produced overdose statistics and death certificates. In the following year, 847 people died from fentanyl overdoses in Los Angeles County. That blood is on your hands. You protected the dealers who killed them. But the protection went much deeper than just public statements. Tulsi produced more documents. This is an FBI organized crime assessment identifying 17 community organizations in your district that are actually fronts for gang money laundering, youth programs that don't serve youth, community centers that are really gang headquarters, nonprofit organizations that exist primarily to clean dirty money. And you've personally directed millions in federal grants to these organizations. The list was damning. Each organization had a legitimate-sounding name and mission, but FBI surveillance had documented their real purpose. South Central Youth Empowerment, ostensibly a program to keep kids out of gangs, was actually run by a convicted Crips leader who used it to recruit new members and launder drug money. Watts Community Action Network, supposedly providing social services, was controlled by MS-13 and used as a front for human smuggling operations. Angels of Hope Foundation, claiming to help at-risk girls, was actually a front for human trafficking and prostitution operations targeting minors. These are community programs helping at-risk youth and families. Waters insisted, but her voice was weak now. Defensive. She knew what was coming. These are gang operations using taxpayer money. Tulsi responded, producing financial records that showed exactly how the scheme worked. Here's how it operates. Gangs set up a community organization with a sympathetic-sounding mission. They recruit a few legitimate people to serve on the board as cover. You direct federal money to them through grants and programs you control. They use that money to fund criminal operations, to provide legal cover for their activities, to pay salaries to gang members as community workers. And they kick back contributions to your campaign and your political network. The financial trail was crystal clear. Every gang-connected organization that received federal funds through Waters' influence had made substantial contributions to her political machine. Campaign contributions that just happened to come right before or right after grant approvals. Donations that followed a pattern of pay-to-play corruption. Taxpayer money flowing to criminals who then funded Waters' political career. But the worst part is the missing children, Tulsi said, and her voice cracked with genuine emotion. She produced files that made everyone in the studio go silent. In the past 10 years, over 3,000 children have gone missing from your district. 3,000. That's 3 times the national average. Many of these children were in the foster care system. Others were unaccompanied minors in immigration processing. Others were runaways from broken homes, all of them vulnerable, all of them in need of protection, and they vanished. She displayed photographs on the monitors. Dozens of young faces, children of all races and backgrounds, all missing, all last seen in Waters' district. FBI and DHS investigations show that many of these children were trafficked through gang networks operating under your political protection. When federal agents try to investigate, you accuse them of targeting your community. When they try to rescue these children, you call it harassment and persecution. The evidence included intercepted communications between gang leaders discussing their protection. One particularly chilling recording featured a gang leader bragging to his associates, "Maxine's got our back. As long as we keep the donations flowing, the feds can't touch us. We can move the product, we can move the girls, we can do our business." She makes sure the heat stays away. "Let me tell you about specific children," Tulsi said, producing case files that represented real tragedies. Maria Gonzalez, 14 years old, disappeared from a foster home in your district in 2019. FBI intelligence indicated she was being trafficked by a gang operating out of a community center you had personally dedicated and funded. When agents tried to investigate, you showed up with cameras and activists and accused them of racial profiling. The investigation was shut down under political pressure. Maria was never found. To this day, her mother doesn't know if she's alive or dead. More cases followed. Children who vanished into the criminal underworld. Investigations that were blocked by political interference. Gang members who were protected by Waters's rhetoric and influence. Each case was a tragedy. Each one represented a child who needed protection and instead found betrayal from the person who was supposed to represent them. Here's the business model, Tulsi explained with cold, precise fury. Mexican cartels need distribution networks in American cities. They recruit street gangs to provide that network. The gangs need political protection to operate. You provide that protection in exchange for money laundered through campaign contributions and nonprofit donations. The drugs flow north. The guns flow south. The money flows in a circle. And the children just disappear into the machine. She produced communications intercepts between cartel leaders and gang contacts in Waters's district. The Sinaloa cartel calls your district La Plaza Segura, the safe plaza. They know federal law enforcement can't operate effectively there because you'll interfere, because you'll rally the community against them, because you'll use your political power to shut down investigations. Your district is valuable to them specifically because you protect it from law enforcement. This is character assassination and lies, Waters shouted, but there was desperation in her voice now, terror in her eyes. She could see where this was going. This is documented fact, Tulsi responded. She produced a joint task force report from every relevant federal agency. DEA, FBI, ATF, Border Patrol, ICE, U.S. Marshals. All of them agreeing on one conclusion. Your political interference has made your district a safe haven for the most dangerous criminal organizations in the Western Hemisphere. Organizations that traffic in drugs, guns, and human beings. Organizations that exploit children. But the most damning evidence was about to be revealed. In 2021, a joint task force identified a major human trafficking ring operating through your district, Tulsi revealed. They had evidence of dozens of children being moved through safe houses connected to organizations you fund and protect. Houses in Watts, in Compton, in South Central. Children being held there, being exploited there, being moved in and out of California to serve a trafficking network that operated across multiple states. She paused, letting the weight of what she was about to say sink in. You were briefed on this operation in a classified committee meeting. You were told about the trafficking ring. You were told about the children. You were told about the upcoming multi-agency operation to rescue them. And within 48 hours of that briefing, the safe houses were empty. The children were gone, moved somewhere else to continue being exploited. Someone leaked that classified information to the traffickers. Someone warned them. Someone who was in that meeting. And Congresswoman Waters, you were one of only 6 people who knew about that operation. The implication was clear and horrifying. Waters had potentially warned human traffickers about a rescue operation, allowing them to move their victims before law enforcement could save them. Children who could have been rescued remained in the hands of their abusers because someone tipped off the traffickers. Every missing child, every overdose death, every family destroyed by gang violence in your district, it all happened under your political protection, Tulsi declared. You turned your district into a criminal enterprise where the most vulnerable pay the price for your corruption, where children are victimized so you can maintain your political power, where drug dealers operate freely so they can fund your campaigns, where human traffickers prey on the defenseless because you run interference for them. She closed the 4th folder and reached for the final one, marked with the highest levels of classification from multiple intelligence agencies. Now for the final revelation. Let's discuss what foreign intelligence agencies have in their files about Maxine Waters. Let's discuss why you're listed as an intelligence asset by America's enemies. Let's discuss how many American soldiers died because you sold their secrets for money. The final folder bore classification markings that indicated this was intelligence from the most sensitive sources and methods available to the United States government. As Tulsi opened it, the very air in the studio seemed to thicken with tension. This wasn't corruption or crime anymore. This was espionage. This was treason at the highest level. Congresswoman Waters, Tulsi began, her voice deadly serious. What I'm about to reveal comes from the most classified sources in our intelligence community. Sources and methods I'm authorized to protect, but whose product I'm authorized to declassify when it's in the national interest. You're not just corrupt. You're not just a criminal who's gotten rich off public service. You're a foreign intelligence asset who has betrayed your country for money." Waters's face had gone completely white, pale as death. Her hands gripped the table so hard her knuckles showed white. Her breathing was rapid and shallow. She looked like someone staring into an abyss. "Let's start with the Chinese Ministry of State Security," Tulsi said, producing a document covered in classification stamps and translation markings. "In their files, according to intelligence we've obtained through sensitive collection methods, you're listed under the code name Beverly Hills. Recruited in 1995 during a congressional delegation to Beijing. Status listed as active asset. High-value placement in the United States Congress." She let that sink in. Let the American people absorb what that meant. A sitting member of Congress listed as an active intelligence asset by Chinese intelligence. Someone the Chinese considered recruited. Someone they considered reliable. Someone they valued highly. "The recruitment happened during a congressional delegation to Beijing," Tulsi continued, reading from intelligence reports. "You were having financial difficulties. Your husband's automotive business was failing. You had significant debts. The Chinese identified you as vulnerable and made their approach. They offered business opportunities for your husband. They offered campaign contributions through cutouts. They offered financial help. And in return, all they wanted was friendship, information, cooperation on issues important to China. This is McCarthy-era red baiting." Waters protested, but her voice was weak and trembling. "This is trying to silence a strong voice for justice by making up conspiracy theories about Chinese influence. This is documented intelligence from multiple sources," Tulsi responded. She produced intercepts of communications between Chinese intelligence officers discussing their asset Beverly Hills. The intercepts had been translated from Mandarin. They referenced specific information that Waters had provided, specific legislative actions she'd influenced, specific interventions she'd made on behalf of Chinese interests. She began reading from the translated documents. Each entry was a betrayal. Asset Beverly Hills provided committee discussion details on Taiwan arms sales. Intelligence assessment was accurate. Recommend bonus payment through established channels. Asset Beverly Hills confirmed technology transfer restrictions will be delayed in committee. Her influence on Financial Services Committee remains strong. Continue to cultivate. Asset Beverly Hills warns of upcoming sanctions on Chinese banks. Recommend immediate fund transfers to avoid exposure. Intelligence proved valuable. Each entry was more damning than the last. Waters hadn't just taken Chinese money. She'd actively provided intelligence that helped China circumvent American policies, avoid American sanctions, and advance Chinese interests at America's expense. She'd used her position on committees that dealt with finance, with technology, with trade policy, to serve Chinese intelligence. "But China isn't the only foreign service with a file on you," Tulsi continued. "Russian SVR Foreign Intelligence lists you as someone they've cultivated. Their file calls you useful idiot, their term not mine. Someone recruited through political ideology rather than direct payment, though they note you've never turned down their financial support when it's been offered through intermediaries." She produced more intelligence assessments documenting Waters' connections to pro-Russian organizations, her opposition to sanctions after Russian actions in Ukraine and Georgia, her parroting of Russian talking points about NATO expansion being provocative, about American imperialism, about Western aggression. The pattern suggested either coordination or an ideological alignment that Russia had learned to exploit. "The Iranians have you listed as friendly asset 14, Tulsi revealed. Not directly recruited, but reliably supportive of their interests in exchange for donations to Palestinian causes you champion. Causes that funnel money back to your political operations through various organizations." But the most devastating revelation was about American deaths. Americans who died because Waters betrayed classified information. In 2019, you served on a classified intelligence subcommittee reviewing operations against Iranian proxy forces in Iraq, Tulsi said, her voice hardening with barely controlled rage. You had access to operational details about American Special Forces missions targeting Iranian-backed militias that were killing American troops with Iranian-supplied weapons. She produced a timeline that made the connection undeniable and chilling. June 10, 2019. Classified briefing on upcoming operations against Iranian-backed militias. Details included timing, locations, target list of militia commanders. June 20, 2019. Unusual pattern of calls from your office to numbers later identified by NSA as Iranian intelligence cutouts. Numbers that showed up in other counterintelligence investigations. Numbers associated with Iranian intelligence officers operating under various covers. June 25, 2019. American Special Operations raid fails catastrophically. 3 American soldiers killed in an ambush. The enemy was waiting for them. They knew exactly where the Americans would be and when they would be there. The Iranians knew we were coming, Tulsi said, her voice cracking with emotion. Someone warned them. Someone with access to that classified briefing. Someone who knew the operational details. And the evidence points to you. She displayed photographs of 3 young American soldiers. Sergeant First Class Michael Chen, 28 years old, Purple Heart recipient, father of 2 young children. Staff Sergeant James Williams, 26 years old, engaged to be married. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, 24 years old, first-generation American whose parents had immigrated from El Salvador. They died because someone sold out their mission for Iranian money, Tulsi said. They died in a foreign land, serving their country, because someone in Congress betrayed them. Their families were told they died as heroes. And they did die as heroes. But they died because of treachery at the highest levels of our government. You can't prove I had anything to do with that, Waters shouted desperately. But her protest sounded hollow even to her own ears. Actually, I can, Tulsi replied coldly. NSA intercepted communications between Iranian intelligence officers discussing the warning they received. They referenced their congressional source. They specifically mention information that was only discussed in that classified briefing. Information about the operational timeline, about the targets, about the approach routes. Information that only someone in that briefing room would know. But there was more, much more. This pattern repeats across multiple operations over many years, Tulsi continued. Information you had access to repeatedly ended up in enemy hands. American operations were compromised. American assets were exposed. American lives were lost. And the pattern correlates directly with your access to classified information. She produced a comprehensive intelligence assessment from the CIA's Counterintelligence Center. CIA estimates that intelligence leaks traceable to your access have resulted in the deaths of at least 47 American service members and intelligence assets over 20 years. 47 Americans, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, intelligence officers, people serving their country, dead because Maxine Waters sold their secrets to America's enemies. Here's how it worked, Tulsi explained with prosecutorial precision. You receive classified briefings in your committee work. Your staff, many of whom we now know had suspicious foreign contacts, would take notes. Within days, sometimes within hours, that information would appear in foreign intelligence channels. Sometimes through direct communication that we intercepted. Sometimes through cutouts and intermediaries. Sometimes through what appeared to be accidental discussions with foreign nationals that weren't accidental at all. She produced communication intercepts and surveillance reports that showed the pattern clearly. Waters' staff members meeting with foreign nationals who were later identified as intelligence officers or their agents. Classified information being discussed in seemingly casual conversations. Payments flowing back through various channels. Campaign contributions, speaking fees, business opportunities, the whole corrupt web of foreign influence. You didn't just betray your oath of office, Tulsi declared. You betrayed every American who ever put on a uniform to defend this country. You sold their lives for foreign money. You traded American blood for your political career and your personal wealth. You're a traitor in the truest sense of the word. But the final revelation was the most shocking of all. 3 months ago, Tulsi revealed, you were briefed on a new counterintelligence operation. It was presented as routine intelligence sharing, but it was actually a trap, a canary trap designed to identify leakers in Congress. Different members were given different versions of the same information with slight variations. If any specific version leaked, we'd know exactly who the source was. Waters's eyes widened in absolute terror as she realized what was coming. She understood that she'd been caught in a trap, that everything she'd done, every secret she'd leaked, every betrayal she'd committed, it had all been documented. The information given only to you appeared in Chinese intelligence communications within 72 hours, Tulsi announced. We have you dead to rights, Congresswoman. The specific details that only you were told showed up in intercepts of Chinese intelligence. There's no ambiguity, no room for doubt. You're caught. The evidence is irrefutable. She produced the final document, a federal arrest warrant issued by a United States magistrate judge. This morning, while we've been having this conversation, federal agents raided your offices and your homes. They found encrypted communication devices. They found large amounts of foreign currency hidden in your residence. They found documents that corroborate everything I've revealed today. Evidence of espionage, evidence of foreign influence, evidence of betrayal. Maxine Waters, Tulsi said, standing with the full authority of American justice behind her. You are a foreign intelligence asset who has betrayed your country for money and power. You have American blood on your hands. 47 American service members and intelligence assets dead because you sold their secrets. Your 40-year reign of corruption, of violence, of betrayal ends today, right now, on national television, where everyone can see that justice still exists in America. As Director of National Intelligence, she concluded, I am formally declassifying all evidence of your foreign intelligence activities. Every document, every intercept, every assessment. The American people deserve to know that their Congress was infiltrated by someone who sold out her country for our enemy's silver. They deserve to know that we've caught the traitor. And they deserve to know that justice is coming for everyone who betrayed their oath. The MSNBC studio had transformed from a news set into ground zero of the biggest political explosion in American history. Maxine Waters sat frozen in her chair, destroyed, exposed, finished. 40 years of corruption, violence, foreign betrayal, and treason laid bare for the world to see. But Tulsi Gabbard wasn't finished delivering justice. Ladies and gentlemen watching at home, Tulsi said, addressing the cameras directly, speaking to the American people who'd witnessed this unprecedented exposure. What you've witnessed today is the systematic destruction of one of the most corrupt politicians in American history. But this is bigger than just Maxine Waters. This is about accountability, about justice, about whether we're still a nation of laws or whether powerful people are above those laws. She gestured to the classified folders spread across the table like evidence at a murder trial. Financial corruption, stealing millions in taxpayer dollars through schemes that turned government programs into personal enrichment, inciting violence that killed Americans and destroyed communities, taking money from foreign dictators and crime syndicates, protecting human traffickers who prey on children, and selling American military secrets to our enemies, resulting in the deaths of at least 47 American service members. The scope of Waters' crimes was so vast it was almost incomprehensible. 4 decades of systematic betrayal of every principle America stood for, every oath she'd taken, every responsibility she'd accepted. Congresswoman Waters, Tulsi continued, turning back to her destroyed opponent. You asked earlier if I was accusing you of espionage. Let me be crystal clear. I'm not accusing you. I'm proving it with declassified intelligence that will be provided to federal prosecutors today. I'm proving it with financial records that show money flowing from foreign governments into your network. I'm proving it with communications intercepts that show you leaking classified information. I'm proving it with the bodies of dead American soldiers whose missions you betrayed. Waters finally found her voice, though it was weak and desperate. A last attempt to use the shield that had protected her for so long. This is a right-wing conspiracy, a witch hunt. You're attacking me because I'm a strong black woman who refuses to be silenced. This is about racism and sexism and powerful white interests trying to destroy a voice for the black community. Stop, Tulsi commanded with the authority of someone who'd faced real enemies and real evil. Your race and gender don't excuse treason. They don't excuse taking blood money from foreign governments. They don't excuse selling out American soldiers. They don't excuse protecting criminals who prey on children. They don't excuse any of this. She stood, her military bearing filling the frame, her presence commanding the room. I fought in Iraq. I served alongside heroes of every race, every gender, every background. Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, men, women. We all took the same oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The oath you've spent 40 years violating. You want to talk about strong black women? Tulsi continued, her voice rising with righteous fury. Let's talk about Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, Latina American, killed in Iraq because you leaked classified intelligence to Iran. Let's talk about the black business owners whose stores were burned in riots you incited while you called the destruction a rebellion. Let's talk about the black children who disappeared from your district because you protected their traffickers for money. Let's talk about the black families living in poverty in your district while you got rich off their suffering. You're not a civil rights icon. You're a criminal who used racial politics as a shield for corruption. You've done more damage to the black community than any Klansman ever could, because you betrayed them from within. You claimed to represent them while you robbed them. You claimed to fight for them while you exploited them. You wrapped yourself in the language of civil rights while committing crimes that would make the worst segregationists proud. The truth of that statement hung in the air like a final judgment. Waters had enriched herself while her predominantly black district remained mired in poverty, violence, and dysfunction. She'd used the community as a shield and a source of political power while doing nothing to actually help them. Her career was built on their suffering. As Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi announced with the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence, I am implementing the following actions effective immediately. First, all evidence presented today is declassified and will be released to the public in full. No more hiding behind classification to protect criminals in Congress. Every American will see the proof of your betrayal. Second, criminal referrals are being transmitted to the Department of Justice for immediate prosecution on charges of treason, espionage, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. The full weight of federal law enforcement will be brought against you. Third, the FBI is executing search warrants at all properties associated with you and your criminal network. Your homes, your offices, the fake community organizations you've used to launder money and provide cover for gang operations. Everything is being searched. Everything is being seized. Fourth, Treasury is freezing all assets pending forfeiture proceedings. Every dollar you stole, every property you bought with blood money, every investment you made with foreign bribes, it's all being seized by the United States government to be returned to the American people you robbed. Fifth, congressional leadership is being formally notified of your status as a foreign intelligence asset. Your security clearances are revoked immediately. Your committee assignments are terminated. You are barred from access to any classified information, and recommendations are being made for your expulsion from Congress. Each announcement was another nail in Waters' political coffin. 40 years of power evaporating in real time. A career built on corruption and betrayal collapsing under the weight of truth. But here's what really matters, Tulsi said, her voice softening with genuine emotion. To the families of the 47 service members killed because she leaked intelligence, justice is finally coming for you. Your loved ones' deaths will not be in vain. Their sacrifice will be honored by holding their betrayer accountable. To the business owners whose lives were destroyed in riots she incited, justice is coming. You will see the person who encouraged the destruction of everything you built face the consequences. To the parents whose children disappeared in her district, we will not stop until we find them. Every resource of the United States government will be dedicated to finding those missing children and bringing the traffickers who took them to justice. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. Maxine Waters, the woman who terrorized American politics for 4 decades with accusations of racism and demands for confrontation, began to cry. Not the theatrical tears of political theater, not the crocodile tears of someone playing victim, but the broken sobs of someone whose entire life had been exposed as a lie, whose every achievement was tainted by corruption, whose legacy would be nothing but betrayal and shame. "I never meant," she stammered through her tears, trying one last time to claim innocence. "You never meant to get caught," Tulsi finished coldly. "You spent 40 years meaning to do exactly what you did, stealing, inciting violence, betraying your country, protecting criminals, profiting from others' suffering. You meant every bit of it. The only thing you didn't mean was for the truth to come out." She began gathering the classified folders with military precision. "Your tears don't bring back the dead. They don't unburn the businesses. They don't rescue the trafficked children. They don't unsell the secrets. They're as worthless as your word, as meaningless as your oath." As if on cue, the studio doors opened and federal agents entered. FBI agents in their distinctive blue windbreakers, serious-faced, professional, ready to take a traitor into custody. The special agent in charge approached Waters directly. "Maxine Waters, you're under arrest for violations of the Espionage Act, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, and multiple federal corruption statutes. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." As the agents placed handcuffs on Waters' wrists, Tulsi delivered her final statement to the cameras. "To the American people watching, to every corrupt politician who thought they were untouchable, to every corrupt politician watching this, consider this your warning. The age of accountability has arrived. We have the intelligence. We have the evidence. We have the will to expose every crime you thought was hidden, every foreign connection you thought was secret, every betrayal you thought was protected. The old rules are over. The era of consequences has begun. To every American who's lost faith in justice, who thinks the system is rigged, who believes powerful people always get away with it, today proves that no one is above the law. Not if patriots are willing to stand up and tell the truth. Not if people with access to the evidence have the courage to expose it. Not if we remember that our oath to the Constitution matters more than political connections or personal advancement. And to our enemies, foreign and domestic, we are coming for all of you. Every foreign agent operating in our government, every corrupt official selling out American interests, every traitor who put money ahead of country. Your time is up. We're watching you. We're documenting your crimes, and we will bring you to justice." As federal agents led Waters away in handcuffs, the last image America saw was the complete destruction of a political dynasty built on corruption. The woman who'd ruled through intimidation and race-card politics for 40 years, reduced to a sobbing criminal being perp-walked out of a television studio by federal law enforcement. Tulsi Gabbard remained standing. The warrior who delivered justice for countless American victims, the intelligence professional who'd had the courage to expose truth that others wanted to keep hidden, the combat veteran who understood that some fights are worth having, no matter the cost. Her final words would echo through history. "This is what accountability looks like. This is what happens when Americans who actually honor their oath confront those who violate it. This is what happens when truth meets lies. This is justice." Within minutes of Maxine Waters being led away in handcuffs on live television, the political landscape of America shifted like tectonic plates colliding. The footage spread across social media faster than any political content in history. Servers crashed under the load. Trending topics exploded. The entire country was watching, sharing, reacting to the most dramatic political confrontation anyone had ever witnessed. Waters' traitor exploded to 1 billion mentions in the first 4 hours, becoming the fastest trending topic in social media history. Justice Served hit 800 million. Tulsi Exposed Truth reached 600 million. Americans who had given up on accountability, who thought the system was broken beyond repair, suddenly saw proof that justice was still possible. That truth could still triumph. That corruption could still be exposed. The immediate political impact was seismic. like an earthquake that reshapes the entire landscape in seconds. Within an hour of the broadcast, 17 members of the Congressional Black Caucus called emergency press conferences to distance themselves from Waters, to condemn her actions, to save their own political careers from association with a proven traitor. "We condemn in the strongest possible terms the crimes exposed today," said caucus chairman Hakeem Jeffries, visibly shaken and sweating under the studio lights. "Corruption has no color. Treason has no race. Justice must be colorblind." Maxine Waters does not represent the values of this caucus or of the black community. She betrayed everyone who trusted her. By evening, the Democratic Party was in full crisis mode. Emergency leadership meetings that were supposed to be private leaked to the press almost immediately, members screaming at each other, accusations flying, everyone trying to figure out their own exposure. How many others had taken foreign money? How many had protected criminal operations? How many had blood on their hands? The first resignation came at 6 p.m. Eastern. A California congressman who had been Waters' protege for 15 years, who had followed her playbook of race card politics and inflammatory rhetoric, announced he would not seek re-election in order to focus on my legal defense and family. A clear admission that he knew investigations were coming, that the corruption went beyond just Waters. By midnight, 34 Democratic officials across California had either resigned or announced they wouldn't run for re-election. Some were clearly dirty and trying to get out before they were exposed. Others were clean but couldn't survive the association with Waters in their districts. The flood had begun. The old guard that had protected corruption was collapsing. But the more profound impact was on the communities Waters had claimed to represent for 40 years. In South Central Los Angeles, in Watts, in Compton, spontaneous celebrations broke out. People dancing in the streets, not because they were celebrating someone's downfall, but because they were celebrating justice. Finally, after decades of being ignored, of being exploited, of being robbed by the person who claimed to fight for them, business owners who'd lost everything in riots Waters incited gathered to share their stories with reporters, to finally tell the truth without fear of being called racist or being attacked by Waters' political machine. Parents of missing children held vigils, finally believing their cases might be investigated without political interference, that someone might actually look for their babies. Maria Rodriguez, widow of Staff Sergeant Michael Chen, who died in Iraq after Waters leaked intelligence, gave an interview that broke America's heart. She'd been living with grief for years, not knowing the truth about her husband's death. "For years, I was told my husband died as a hero defending freedom overseas. And he did die as a hero. But today I learned he died because a traitor in Congress sold his mission to Iranian intelligence for money. At least now I know the truth. At least now there might be justice. At least now Michael's death might mean something by exposing the evil that killed him." The international response was equally dramatic. Allied intelligence agencies that had been quietly limiting their sharing with the United States due to concerns about congressional security breaches immediately began opening up again. Within hours of Waters' arrest, British intelligence, Israeli intelligence, Australian intelligence, all contacted the DNI to say they could now resume full intelligence sharing. "We knew there were leaks at the highest levels of the American government," admitted a senior British intelligence official in a rare public statement. "We've been limiting what we shared in sensitive committees because we couldn't risk the information being compromised. Now that the source has been identified and removed, we can restore full intelligence cooperation with our American partners. This will make both our countries safer." The legal machinery of justice moved with unprecedented speed. No more protecting the powerful, no more delaying justice for political convenience. By dawn the next day, federal agents had raided 17 properties connected to Waters' corruption network. Houses, offices, storage units, safe deposit boxes, everything. They found encrypted communications equipment that Waters had used to communicate with foreign intelligence contacts, equipment that had no legitimate purpose for a member of Congress. Stacks of foreign currency hidden in various locations, Chinese yuan, Russian rubles, Iranian riyals, euros, money that couldn't be explained by any legitimate income. Most shocking was a safe in Waters's Hancock Park mansion containing $3.2 million in cash, bills traced to Chinese banks, money that had come through Haitian government accounts, cash that originated in cartel money laundering operations, the physical evidence of treason, stacked in neat bundles in a safe like a drug dealer's stash house. The prosecution built an airtight case that couldn't be plea bargained away or buried. With the declassified intelligence Tulsi had provided, plus the physical evidence from the raids, plus financial records spanning decades, plus witness testimony from dozens of victims and cooperating witnesses, Waters faced 127 federal charges: treason, espionage, racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, fraud. The charges went on for pages. 3 months later, Maxine Waters stood trial in federal court. The woman who'd once commanded rooms with accusations of racism, who'd destroyed opponents with a single word, who'd been untouchable for decades, now sat silently as witness after witness detailed her crimes. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, devastating. Intelligence officers testified about leaked secrets and the Americans who died because of those leaks. Soldiers' families spoke tearfully about their loved ones, about the pain of loss now compounded by the knowledge of betrayal. Business owners described watching their life's work burn, while Waters called it understandable rebellion. Parents of missing children begged for information about their babies, victims of the corruption machine that Waters had built for 40 years. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on all 127 counts. There was never any real doubt. The evidence was too strong, the proof too clear, justice too obvious. At sentencing, the federal judge delivered a statement that captured the national mood and the weight of Waters's crimes. Mrs. Waters, you held a position of sacred trust. You were elected by the people to represent their interests, to fight for their welfare, to uphold the Constitution. You swore an oath to defend this nation and its Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Instead, you became a domestic enemy. You sold that oath to the highest bidder. You enriched yourself with blood money, while the communities you claimed to represent suffered in poverty and violence and fear. You are a traitor in the fullest sense of the word. You betrayed your constituents. You betrayed your colleagues. You betrayed your country. You betrayed the Americans who died because you sold their secrets. You betrayed the children who were trafficked because you protected their abusers. You have shown no remorse, no recognition of the magnitude of your crimes, no acknowledgement of the suffering you've caused. Life in federal prison without the possibility of parole, the maximum sentence for treason. The judge's voice was firm and final. You will spend the rest of your life in prison, where you will never again have the opportunity to betray the American people. As Waters was led away in shackles and an orange jumpsuit, she turned for one last look at the courtroom. The gallery was filled with her victims, families of dead soldiers holding photographs of their loved ones, parents of missing children clutching pictures of babies they might never see again, business owners who'd lost everything, every face filled with pain she'd caused. Not one showed sympathy. Not one offered forgiveness. 40 years of race-card politics and corruption couldn't save her from the weight of her crimes. For Tulsi Gabbard, the transformation was equally profound but entirely different. Overnight, she became the most trusted figure in American politics. Someone who'd proven that courage, integrity, and dedication to truth could still triumph in a corrupt system. Approval ratings hit 87%, numbers not seen since George Washington. Levels that transcended party, race, region, every demographic. Tulsi for President movements erupted organically across the country. Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and progressives, young and old, everyone united by the belief that this was someone who could be trusted, someone who'd proven they put country above politics, someone who actually meant their oath. But Tulsi remained focused on her mission, not on political advancement, not on leveraging her new popularity, but on the job she'd been appointed to do. In testimony before Congress that was watched by millions, she laid out the scope of corruption her investigation had uncovered. Maxine Waters was not unique. she told the assembled members of Congress. She was simply the most egregious example of a systemic problem. Foreign influence, criminal connections, betrayal of oath, these things have infected our government at levels we're only beginning to understand. We've been compromised, and we need to clean house. She announced the creation of a new counterintelligence task force specifically targeting corruption in Congress, not targeting one party or the other, not playing political games, but identifying and exposing everyone who'd betrayed their oath, regardless of party affiliation or political power. Within 6 months, 47 additional members of Congress were under investigation. Some would be cleared. Others would face justice just like Waters. The swamp wasn't just being drained, it was being pumped dry. The corrupt system that had protected powerful criminals for decades was being dismantled piece by piece. And America was watching, finally believing that change was possible. The cultural impact was perhaps the most lasting. The stark contrast between Waters' corruption and Tulsi's integrity created a new model for American leadership. Military service surged as young Americans, inspired by Tulsi's example, sought to serve with honor, to be part of something bigger than themselves, to prove that not all leaders were corrupt. Political ethics became a central issue in every election. Candidates faced new scrutiny, questions they couldn't dodge. Are you a Waters or a Gabbard became shorthand for questioning any politician's integrity. Have you taken foreign money? Will you release your financial records? Do you put country above party? Questions that used to be avoided now demanded answers. Congressional approval ratings, which had been in the teens for years, began to slowly climb as the most corrupt members were removed and new blood came in. People who actually wanted to serve rather than enrich themselves. The system was healing, slowly but surely. 1 year after the confrontation that changed America, Tulsi gave a speech at Arlington National Cemetery, standing before the graves of the 47 service members killed due to Waters' treason. The graves stretched out in neat rows, white headstones marking the final resting place of American heroes. Heroes who'd been betrayed by someone who was supposed to protect them. These heroes died believing America was worth defending, Tulsi said, her voice carrying across the cemetery. They believed that truth was worth more than power. That honor meant something, that their sacrifice served a cause greater than themselves. Today, we've proven they were right. Their sacrifice was not in vain. Justice may have been delayed for far too long, but justice has been delivered. To those who still serve in uniform, know that we will protect you from betrayal. We will never again allow traitors to sell your secrets. We will never again tolerate corruption that puts your lives at risk. You fight for us. We will fight for you. To those who would betray their oath, know that we will find you. We're watching. We're documenting. We will bring you to justice no matter how powerful you think you are. To those who keep the faith, who honor their oath, who put country above self, your time has come. America needs you now more than ever. As the sun set over Arlington, casting long shadows across the graves of American heroes, a new chapter in American history had truly begun. A chapter where corruption could be exposed, where justice could prevail, where those who kept their oaths could triumph over those who sold them for money and power. Maxine Waters' name became synonymous with the ultimate betrayal. Her portrait was removed from the Capitol building. Her name was stripped from every building and program that had borne it. Streets were renamed. Schools were renamed. Every honor that had been bestowed on her was revoked. History would remember her only as a cautionary tale of what happens when power corrupts absolutely, when someone betrays everything they're supposed to stand for, when a servant of the people becomes a predator feeding on them. But more importantly, history would remember this as the day American justice was reborn, the day a combat veteran stood up to corruption and won, the day the swamp learned to fear the truth, the day America proved that no one, absolutely no one, is above the law. If you made it this far through this story, you've witnessed something extraordinary. The complete destruction of one of the most corrupt politicians in American history, delivered by someone with the courage, the authority, and the evidence to expose the truth. Someone who put duty above safety, country above career, and justice above political convenience. Hit that like button if you believe justice was served today. Subscribe for more content exposing the deep state corruption that still threatens our democracy. Share this story everywhere you can, on every platform, with everyone you know. Let them know we're watching. Let them know we demand accountability. Let them know the age of tolerating corruption is over. Comment below which corrupt politician should be investigated next. Who else has foreign connections that need exposing? Who else has blood money funding their campaigns? Who else has American deaths on their hands? The investigation doesn't stop with Maxine Waters. She was just the beginning, the first domino to fall, but there are many more dominoes waiting. Remember this: when veterans who actually served, who actually sacrificed, who actually understand what honor means face politicians who only serve themselves, there's never any doubt about who will prevail. Truth always defeats lies. Courage always defeats corruption. Honor always triumphs over betrayal. This is what happens when real patriots confront fake leaders who hide behind their positions and political connections. This is what happens when truth armed with evidence meets lies protected by political machinery. This is what happens when America remembers what justice looks like, when we demand it, when we fight for it, when we refuse to accept that powerful people can't be held accountable. God bless our troops who serve in uniform every day, putting their lives on the line to defend us. God bless the intelligence professionals who put country over politics, who gather evidence of corruption even when it's dangerous, who speak truth even when it's unpopular. God bless everyone who still believes that in America no one is above the law, that justice isn't just for the powerless, that truth still matters, that oath still means something. The swamp is deeper than we ever imagined, darker than we wanted to believe, more corrupt than most Americans could comprehend. But today proved it's not too deep to drain, not if we have the courage to expose what's hidden in those depths, not if we demand accountability from everyone who serves in public office, not if we remember that government is supposed to serve the people, not enrich the powerful at the people's expense. This is just the beginning, the first victory in a long war to restore integrity to American government. There are more Maxine Waters out there, more corrupt politicians selling out America for money, more traitors putting foreign interests ahead of American lives, more criminals hiding behind political power. But now they know we're coming for them. Now they know that secrets can be exposed, that evidence can be declassified, that justice can be served. Now they know they should be afraid, because the age of accountability has arrived, and there's no going back.